Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk rainy nights. On the coast always have a ghostly beauty. Heavy raindrops beat down on the rusty, corrugated iron roof of a small wooden house, isolated in the middle of a wild coastal area. The roaring sound of the waves mixed with the wind whistling through. The cracks in the door created a cold melody of nature. Chris, a young man who had just moved to this area to find peace after the events in his life, had no idea that the peace he was looking for would soon turn into a nightmare that was hard to escape. The locals had warned him many times that living alone by the coast during the rainy season was a risky decision. They told of fishermen who had mysteriously disappeared while their boats were still anchored close to the shore, or strange figures appearing in the dark. But Chris did not care much. He thought that these were just ghost stories often seen in the countryside, legends fabricated to scare strangers. Tonight, the storm came unexpectedly. The electricity in the house flickered and then went out, leaving a thick darkness in every corner. Chris lit an old oil lamp, the yellow light flickering on his face, casting a long shadow on the wooden wall. He sat quietly listening to the rain, trying to reassure himself that everything was normal. But a feeling of unease rose in his heart as he stepped out onto the porch. The wind carried a cold mist that whipped at his skin. Far out at sea, a flickering light appeared in the thick rain. At first, Chris thought it was the light of a late fishing boat, but the closer he looked, the more he saw it moving erratically. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, sometimes faintly as if it wanted to sink into the deep sea. He rubbed his eyes, telling himself that the rain was blurring his vision. But the light was still there, shining strangely. Amidst the sound of the wind and waves, another sound rang out. It was like a soft call, long and gloomy. Chris held his breath and listened, his heart pounding. The sound came from the sea, mixed with the wind, making it difficult to tell if it was real or an illusion. His instinct told him to turn back into the house, but his curiosity held him back. He tried to strain his eyes to see through the rain, and then a blurry figure appeared at the water's edge. It was a figure, tall and thin, long hair dripping wet, clothes clinging to the body. The figure stood motionless, its face turned straight towards the wooden house where Chris was standing. A cold feeling ran down his spine. He blurted out in his mind. He was alone here. How could anyone else be standing there in this harsh rain and wind? Chris stepped back, but his eyes could not leave that figure. A bolt of lightning tore across the sky, revealing a pale face, dark eyes without light, and lips moving slightly as if whispering something. Chris fell backwards in panic. The oil lamp in his hand fell, the small flame flickering on the wet ground. In the darkness, the call rang out again, clearer, more creepy. He crawled back to the door, his hands shaking as he locked it. But when he looked up, he realized that the figure had disappeared. There was only the white curtain of rain and the sound of the raging waves. Chris forced himself to believe that it was all just a joke of his mind when he was too tired. He smiled faintly, but the smile was distorted because his hands were still shaking non-stop in the middle of the night. When the wind had subsided, Chris heard a soft knock coming from the window. 3 times, intermittently, then silence. His heart seemed to stop. He tiptoed, trying to look outside through the crack of the door. There was nothing but darkness and rain. But when he turned around, the 3 knocks rang out again, this time. Right behind him, Chris turned around. the wooden door on the porch shaking violently as if someone was trying to get in. The whisper rang out again, this time clearer. Chris, ... He was stunned. No one in this area knew his name. Thunder boomed. The door flew open. The wind blew into the house, blowing out the candle that had just been lit. In a moment of darkness, Chris felt a cold hand touch his shoulder. He screamed, fell to the floor, and when he looked up, there was only an empty space, silent as if nothing had ever happened. Chris trembled, locked the door, crawled into the corner of the room, and held his head. He closed his eyes, trying to sleep in fear, but the call still echoed in his head, lingering like the whisper of the ocean. Out there, the rainy night shore still roared, and it seemed something was still standing there, looking at the small house, waiting for the right moment to enter. The end of episode 1, the secrets of the shore were just beginning to be revealed. Stay tuned for the next episode, titled Episode 2, Lost Light in the Rain, to discover the creepy truth that awaits.